And to discuss what this could mean for Syria and ties between Washington and Ankara, I'm joined by Marwan Kabalan. He is the Director of Policy Analysis at the Arab Center for Research and Policy Studies in Doha. And here in Istanbul, we have Mehmet Celik, the Managing Editor of the English language daily Sabah newspaper. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you on the program. So Marwan, has this agreement come as a surprise?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, for many of us, actually, we have been expecting the Americans to take further measures or further steps, in fact, to strengthen the position of the Syria Democratic Forces, that is the SDF. The United States actually decided to keep some troops in the first place in the region in order to protect the oil fields, the Syrian oil fields in the east and northeast. And we know that President Trump has said at least twice that he wanted the United States actually, or companies, U.S. companies, to help the Kurds actually have the oil revenue instead of having the United States paying them. Because, as you know, the United States president actually is mainly concerned about what the United States is spending here and there.
Yes.
So it wasn't really a surprise for many of us.
So besides modernizing oil fields and generating an income for the locals, as the United States claims, Mehmet, what are the ulterior motives behind this deal? And what do you make of the names running this energy company?
Well, first of all, I think that the whole deal itself is problematic for several reasons. First of all, it legitimizes taking over the Syrian people's energy resources through an entity that has been, on the list of terror organizations by the United States and the European Union, as well as Turkey. I mean, we are talking about SDF, but ultimately this is YPG, which is nothing different than the PKK terrorist organization. So the Syrian oil is, in a way, being stolen through a terrorist organization without the approval of the Syrian people as a whole, as a population. Or regardless of this regime in place, this is without the approval of Syria as a territorial entity present on those lands. So it is problematic in that sense, but ultimately it also legitimizes PKK, which is, YPG, which is nothing different than, like we said, the PKK, as an actor on the field, which the U.S. itself has been partnering with, in the name of fighting Daesh.
Yes.
So of course, this is problematic for Turkey, and the company that has been making this deal is run by some of the former generals and some of the former political actors per se. So in a way, this is through a private company, but we have to dig deeper into who is running the company.
Yes, for example, James Rees, one of the partners and former officer in the Army's elite Delta Force, he said during a Fox interview in 2016, quote, "We own the whole eastern parts of Syria, that is ours, and cannot give that up." So how is this possible?
Who is he? We have secured the oil phrase that has been infamous by Trump. We have secured the oil. Whose oil is being secured? In the name of whom? This is a very problematic situation with regards to U.S. motive, U.S. interests in the field. Of course, the U.S. is not there, as it has been claiming for the Syrians, or even for the Syrian Kurds, as they have been partnering with a terrorist organization. The U.S. interests are not necessarily, they're not concerned about the Kurds as a population there, or the locals as the Syrian people. Of course, we have to look at the long-term and mid-term and long-term U.S. interests with regards to energy, with regards to geopolitics in the region. And this unfolding is nothing, it doesn't come to me as a surprise that the U.S. is making a deal with the YPG to secure the oil, because why else would the U.S. be in Syria?
Yes.
Why else would they care about the Syrian people? I don't think democracy and human rights is part of their long-term interests.
Yes. So, Marwan, will this lead the Syrian Kurds acquiring a semi-independent administration similar that of the Kurdish autonomous region in northern Iraq? And what kind of political ramifications it will have on the region, per se, from a Russian or Iranian perspective?
Well, I think the fears are real, actually. Many Syrians fear that this step by the United States might be actually leading to dividing Syria. We believe that if the Kurds actually, the YPG and the YPD, both actually, as Mehmet said, are the Syrian branch of the PKK, are becoming dependent in terms of their economic dependence, their economic having their own economic revenues. That might lead actually to this is what we fear actually, to dividing Syria. The Americans are saying that they are doing that actually as a bargaining chip in order to force the Syrian regime to accept Resolution 2254, which leads to a political solution to the Syrian crisis. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, we believe also that the Americans are using that as a bargaining chips against the Iranians, because they don't want actually the Iranians to establish a so-called a corridor, a Shiite corridor from Iran, Iraq, Syria, along the way to the Mediterranean, to Lebanon. And also,
yes.
The Americans also maybe are using this as a bargaining chip against Turkey itself. This is what we also believe, because we know that while the Americans are having certain agreements with Turkey on certain issues, for example, they are actually having disagreements on other issues. We know that the Americans are, to an extent, siding with Greece against Turkey concerning the East Mediterranean gas exploration. We know the Americans are actually siding with Turkey in Libya. So there are differences, there are agreements, there are disagreements between Turkey and the United States. But overall, we believe that also the Americans, because from the very beginning, Turkey actually offered the Americans to help in the war against ISIL. The Americans, they decided actually to go and support the YPG instead.
All right,
so this is something.
It brings us to the point.
That was,
Mehmet, so what are Turkey's options? I mean, how will it act on the ground? Will Ankara expand on its Peace Spring operation area? Will it choose diplomatic channels? Is there an opportunity that Turkish and Syrian intels cooperate on this matter? What's your take on that?
Well, Turkey has always favored diplomacy over hardcore presence in Syria, and when that fails, Turkey launches its own operations when it's left with no choice but to actually be on the ground and put the boots on the ground, as it did on the Euphrates Shield and the Olive Branch. But I think what's important here is we need to understand how this will unfold for Turkey as a bargaining chip between the United States and Russia, because as we know, both United States and Russia is not, they don't have a secret agenda with the YPG. They are both in some sort of cooperation with the YPG. So how this will unfold for Turkey in its relations with the United States and its relations with Russia, I think it's something that we need to look at, because right now, United States has taken a step forward in its relations, and it has cemented its relationship with the YPG through this oil. How Russia will play by taking Turkey on its side, whether Russia will put a certain distance now between itself and YPG, will also depend on its relationship with Turkey and how Turkey is planning to act on the field, because Turkey has some red lines, and the establishing a YPG entity, a terrorist corridor in northern Syria, is a red line that Turkey is not going to negotiate with any of the partners or actors on the field.
Yeah. So although no harsh reaction from Moscow, Marwan, how do you think this will affect Assad regime's alliance with Tehran, which are under U.S. sanctions?
Well, of course, I think I believe that the Russians are not really happy with this agreement in the first place. One must say, because the Russians, they don't want also to pay any sort of economic aid to the Syrian regime. They want the Syrian regime at the end of the day to have its own independence concerning energy and financial resources. So the Russians are clearly not happy with that agreement. But on the other hand, the Russians are trying to exploit every single issue here that might actually force the Americans somehow out of the region, because they don't want that is the main concern of the Russians in Syria. They want the Americans out of Syria, and they have actually relying to a certain extent with Turkey in order to help them with that. So I think they just took the opportunity immediately after the agreement, which led actually to the withdrawal of the U.S. troops from the borders between Syria and Turkey last fall, and that led, as you know, to the initiation of the Operation Peace Fountain by Turkey.
Yes.
So I think the Russians here are trying to use and exploit every single sword that help them actually push on the one hand the Americans out, and also divide all the other parties in between them on the other hand.
All
so
right.
After all, I think that the Russians will be trying also to bring the Kurds actually to their own side, because they think now the Americans are boosting their relationship with the Kurds, and this is something the Russians actually they don't like. They want the Kurds to be on the side of the regime.
All right, gentlemen, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining us on Straight Talk.